Okay, so I just got through feeding the chickens, so I'm a bit winded, but I'm out here in the garden and it is crazy. I haven't done a garden tour since last year, so I figured I would go ahead and kind of make a video, document how it looks this year. It is definitely different than last year. I have a lot more planted, and a lot of the plants are really getting into their own like large growth cycle. Last year, a lot of the plants were small, or I transplanted them and they were kind of in shock and were developing root systems rather and not growing as much elsewhere. So let's take a look. All right, I do have this cauliflower that I planted in here. I really don't know what it's going to do. And actually, I'm not entirely sure if it is a cauliflower or if it is a cabbage, but I'm just letting it grow to see what it's gonna do. I actually think this weed coming up might be a lion's tail, so I'm gonna keep it and see what happens. I've planted small bush, well, they're not bushes, they're vines, small vine cucumbers. They're not supposed to get very big and go completely haywire, so I'm letting them stay here and seeing what happens with that. My kale from last year is still around over there, but it is crazy big. It is, I'm just kind of letting it do its thing because I wanted to collect the seeds, and it's about time to cut all those off and put them in a bag and shake them out, and keep the seeds for this fall. Everything's a bit weedy, so my agastache came back. This stuff, it smells amazing, and like I want to make tea out of it this year. Sad thing is I've put plastic because the weeds are so bad, but right here was my second honeyberry bush, and this is my first one, and it's doing great. I do need to trim back some of these crepe myrtles so it gets a little more sun, but the second one right here did not make it over winter. It had one little stalk that was still okay, but it did not make it. This is part of my blackberry vine. As you can see, they are going everywhere, which is fine by me. They can have this whole entire like side section up here. And as you can see, they are ever-bearing blackberries, which are not your norm. I actually have neglected to realize that some of them were ripe, but they are growing everywhere. I'm gonna have to get some stakes out here and some wire and like make it to where it can support these up. It's better if they're off the ground, obviously, just to be able to walk, and also because the berries don't get eaten quite as bad. Wow, just look at the size of that. I mean, look at the size of that. That's my thumb. I'm gonna pick that. So first blackberry. Now, I did have a bunch of blackberries that tried to come on earlier in the year, and it didn't work because we got a late frost, and it killed all the flowers. So this is actually my first of the year, but normally I would get about 3 different flushes of blackberries since these are ever-bearing. This right here looks like a weed, but it's not. It's St. John's wort, and I don't know why it's creeping, but it is. It has not bloomed yet. If it doesn't bloom this year, I'm probably going to rip it all out just because it's not really serving its purpose. This massive area is all catnip. It has gone crazy. I'm going to trim it back really hard this year, and if it comes back, it comes back. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But as you can see, the bees love it, and I have no shortage of pollinators. Here is my echinacea. It's taller than me if I get on the low side of the hill. I had to push it back up. It had fallen over. But there are so many blooms. I need to cut some and bring some in just to have some in the house. And let's see if I can get... I did have beans planted to go up on this trellis, and as you can see, one of them is climbing. But the seeds didn't germinate very well, and I don't know if it's because they germinated right before we had like a dry spell. I tried to water them as much as I could, but it might not have been enough. You never know with little seedlings whether they're gonna make it or not. There's a moth hanging out on that leaf. I don't think it's a moth that lays anything that's gonna eat my beans, so it should be fine. He's just hanging out. But anyway, my echinacea is just amazing. This is year 2 of echinacea. The first year they were little bitty scrawny things. But I can't even get near them for the amount of native bees, honey bees, tiny little bees, I don't even know what they're called, bumblebees, they're just covered. But they don't bother me, even if I bump into them accidentally. They're just happy to have flowers. And let's see if I can go around. The ones on the trellis are actually yard-long beans, which are an Asian bean that gets really long, gets like 3 feet long sometimes. But you're supposed to pick them when they're only like a foot long. These here are dragon's tongue beans. They are the best beans for eating. They're a little bit fuzzy, but once you cook them, they actually have a really good taste, and they never get bitter or woody. So they're really, really good, especially if you're like me and you forget to pick them like when they're really young and tender. These will never really get woody on you. Not until they start drying out. This huge bush is all lemon balm. This was a tiny bush that was in the corner here, and now it is taking over this entire spot. But that's okay, because my lemon balm over there next to the catnip got smothered out by the catnip. So this is now my lemon balm for tea, and ointments and things like that. My parsley went to flower. I'm just letting it flower because the pollinators like it. Also my onions went to flower. But I'm kind of just leaving them to see what happens. I know you're supposed to replant them, and I will this fall, but I don't have to mess with them in the summer. I don't really use them that much in the summer. And then this row, I've got marigolds and tomatoes. These are Momotaro tomatoes and Jetstar tomatoes. I decided to just go with something regular that maybe I can use more regular. I don't have great luck with the heirlooms just because they get attacked so often. But here I've got gray zucchini and lots of patty pans, and Englisher squash. And then of course my grapevines in the back there. I've got 2 white and 2 red globe. The red globes do have grapes this year, but they're on the bottom half because all that top growth has just been this year. They're going crazy. I'm gonna have to trim them way back in the fall, and kind of train them a little more, and also put some more wires on the very tops of that trellis and make it go up some more. I've got chickens working the ground. They've cleared all of this of weeds, and they're working on the back half now. They were a little thirsty, so I gave them some more water. But these are the new chickens. They're young. Unfortunately, several of them are roosters, but we'll deal with that when we have to. My blueberry bushes, I've got one there. They're sending up tiny little babies everywhere. I've got strawberries planted here. The grass is growing faster than I can deal with it. This is a blueberry bush as well, and that one, and that one, and that one. So I've got blueberries everywhere, and of course I'm gonna have even more bushes when all these babies catch up. But yesterday I picked this for all of the ripe ones, and of course more have ripened up now. This is my rhubarb plant. It's the only one that survived, but it's really big and doing really well. I just don't really know much what to do with rhubarb, but I figured I'd grow some and give it to somebody maybe who does, just to see. And then these are my raspberries. So my raspberries were tiny, and one of them didn't even make it, so I was a little bit worried. But I do not have to be worried anymore. In fact, they are sending up tiny little babies, which is great. I would love for them to, kind of take over this entire corner. But we picked tons of fresh ones, even though the bushes that bore fruit were really small. And as you can see, I'm gonna get more. This is crazy. So apparently I'm gonna get a few more off these new stalks. They're supposed to bloom and fruit in the fall on the new stalks, but apparently they think it's okay to do that now. I'm not gonna complain. They do get eaten by these Japanese beetles, but the damage, I mean, you can see the damage, but it hasn't been so extensive that I've really needed to do much, so I'm not too worried about it. I will eventually, after the grass is killed, open up this area and let them continue, because I love raspberries so much. I'll let them continue to go up this way. But that's pretty much it. I mean, the garden hasn't been extended down to this area where I planted the corn last time. I'm kind of tarping it off. I'm going to let the chickens go on this part next, just so they can have some fresh ground after they finish this part. I'm probably going to get some compost to cover this area and maybe plant some fall stuff in it. You're supposed to let it sit with the chicken manure for 6 months, so I might not be able to do that yet, but we'll see. If I cover it, it might help a little. Might not be so warm, but yeah, having them in the garden's been fun. It's very hot, so I've got 2 tarps over them for plenty of shade, but they've adapted really well. So yeah, these squash bushes, I can't even get like through here anymore. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. I've harvested so much already, and they're gonna keep coming. I just come out here and squish any bugs I find on them, squish any eggs I find on them, and that's been really helpful this year. Although the pickle worm hasn't quite arrived. And speaking of eggs, there's some, and I usually just tear them off and throw them over somewhere where they can't do any damage, or squish them if I have my gloves on. But I'm gonna wash this off and eat it. So I'm looking forward to some cucumbers. There should be some coming soon. Oh, there's a little bird. All right. Well, anyway, first garden tour is done. I didn't plant a whole lot this year because we've been raising ducks, and I even hatched out some geese, bought an incubator, and we've had lots of fun with that, and Orion's had tons of fun with that. So we have one last small batch of ducklings in the house that are fixing to go outside, because it's getting, plenty warm enough for them, and so they'll be outside soon, which will free up my office again. And we'll be done with the fowl for this year. Speaking of fowl, they're over there taking baths. But, and actually, I can show you them too. Alright, so let's go up here to the barnyard. It's a little bit of a mess. We've had to clear out a lot of stuff that was up there. Hi, Goose! Hi, Goose! They've gotten very big. Hi, Goose, Goose, Goose! Hi, Goose, Goose, Goose! And there's our rooster, Soren. He's a meanie. I have to carry a broom with me to keep him away. But those are the new Welsh Harlequins. Unfortunately, out of the 8 we hatched out, only 1 is female. So I'm having to sell all but 1 male. But they've been pretty fun too. They're smaller ducks than the Saxony ducks. And their shade elephantier is growing. And here is the Saxony ducks. We've got more than we used to, and poor Donald over here has molted, so his feathers are not showing as much on his head like they should. But there we go. Y'all have a pool.